Thank you, Laurent. Hi, everyone. So let's start with the different results of the work package 3 in Tusina, which deals with the impacts of climate change on wind resource and wind energy production. So there are different objectives that were assessed in this particular work package. So the first one was to assess the quality of reanalysis on the French seafronts in comparison to different measurements, either LiDAR or in situ observations. We also, the aim was also to select the best reanalysis among the three reanalyses that were compared. And the purpose was to select the best one to be the reference to correct the different climate models that were used to assess the impact of climate change on wind resource and energy production. Next slide, please. So let's start with the first step. So we were focusing on three reanalyses, which are ERA5, Cosmo REA 6, and SERA. Reanalyses are a good database which allows to have a homogeneous picture of the different climate variables. And in particular, here in our work, it was wind, which was assessed. And the purpose was to evaluate the three reanalyses in comparison to measurements. So we take as references SINOP stations, Météo France SINOP weather station over 1995 to 2018, with around 24 stations that were localized in the different parts of the French coasts, 7 in the English Channel, 11 in the Atlantic coast, and 6 in the Mediterranean coast. They are represented in the figure with the triangle. So if you focus on the figure on the right, you can see these different SINOP stations. And we were dealing with the 10-meter wind speed for these three reanalyses. Then we also looked at LiDAR data, mainly for 100 meter to compare the different reanalyses, because for these reanalyses, we only extracted 10 meter and 100 meter wind speed, but there are other heights that were available, 160 and 190, and this was used also to evaluate the extrapolation of wind from 10 meter to higher altitudes. And then regarding the reanalysis, we have the same period as SINOP station, so 1995-2018, with two regional reanalyses, which are Cosmo REA 6 and SERA, with around 6 kilometer resolution, and ERA5, which is a global reanalysis and around 30 kilometer resolution. And the three reanalyses were available for hourly time horizon. Next slide. And so how different metrics were compared to assess the quality of the three reanalyses. Here we show just one example about seasonal cycle and diurnal cycle. And these two features were compared over 1995-2018. So the first thing that we notice is that the seasonal cycle in general is well represented either for the English Channel or the Atlantic, the figure on the left. However, for the Mediterranean, we have almost the good shape of the seasonal cycle, but we clearly see that SERA, which is represented in green in the figure, is behaving better than Cosmo reanalysis or ERA5, which has a tendency to underestimate the mean wind in the Mediterranean coast. Then regarding the diurnal cycle, we have in general, again, a good representation of diurnal cycle for English Channel and Atlantic. But for the Mediterranean, we have much more difficulties for the reanalysis to estimate this diurnal cycle and to represent it well. And again, we have SERA, which is in green, representing the good shape of the diurnal cycle. Cosmo reanalysis misrepresent the shape of the diurnal cycle, which is in blue. And again, ERA 5 shows an underestimation in the Mediterranean coast. So in general, overall, we have come to the conclusion that SERA performs well for the three coastlines, either for the diurnal cycle, for the seasonal cycle, but also for the distribution and also for the 10-meter wind in comparison to LiDAR data. So this reanalysis was selected as the best reanalysis among the three ones. And these results are summarized in this paper, which was submitted in Advances in Science and Research. Next slide. So once this reanalysis was selected, the purpose is also to assess the impact of climate change on winds. For that, we need to work with climate models, and we choose to use the CEMIP6 climate models, which are the latest and the state-of-the-art climate models among the couplet model intercomparison projects in its 6th phase, and which results were used for the 6th assessment report. So we are working with global models. So we are around 100-kilometer resolution in terms of spatial resolution. So that's why it's really important to make this downscaling approach as a correction and downscaling method to statistically build some climate variables and climate wind that is close to observations. And so the first step about reanalysis selection was to assess this part. And for this CEMIP6 models, we have more than 100 climate models. So it's difficult to work with all these models. And so in EDF, we made the selection using different criteria to come and select 19 climate models that represent the whole CEMIP6 projection ensemble in terms of temperature and precipitation. We selected nearly independent models because each model have different parts that are modeled, ocean, atmosphere, etc. So it's better to have independent models to have independent pictures and independent projections. And then we also assess the performance across France in the historical period to select only the models that are credible and that are good enough to represent climate in France. So after that, we made another selection based on the performance of wind. So one model were removed from this selection. And for the others, when this study began, these models were not available. So that's why we are working with 13 models into CNOW. But for the future, it will be really good to integrate the missing models. And then we are working also with different SSP scenarios, shared socioeconomic pathways scenario, which allow to have different trajectories in terms of greenhouse emissions, in terms of the different strategies for the society, with the SSP2 4.5, which is represented in the figure in orange, being the intermediate one and the closest one to the real emissions that we are facing now. Next slide. And to avoid also some confidentiality aspects, we also concentrate our work on different representative points around France they are close enough to the colors of tender without being so close to avoid any problem with the confidentiality in the results, and to make the different results public, and to be able to publish on these different results. So we have two representative points in the English Channel. Two in the Atlantic, one in the north, one in the south, and two in the Mediterranean coast, one in the east and one in the south. And all the different metrics are built for these different 6 points. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, so we have models that are around 100 kilometers. So we made a statistical downscaling to correct the different biases. We illustrate here in the left the different bias in terms of seasonal cycle, for example. So we have observations in or a reanalysis in black, and the different colors with the 13 models. Thank you. And we can clearly see that in general, models have at least the same shape of the seasonal cycle, but they tend to underestimate wind. So it's really important to make this step to correct the seasonal cycle. And this is illustrated on the right with a better seasonal cycle in for the historical period, a diurnal cycle also, the interannual variability, and the distribution in terms of quantile. So this was done also for the 6 points around the different seafronts. Next slide. And so let's start with different changes in terms of mean, high and low wind speeds. And here we show the multi-model mean for the different 13 models that are used. We are showing the relative change with respect to the historical period, 1995-2014. And we can clearly see, to begin with the mean winds in the middle, that we have a general tendency in weakening of wind for the different sites, with around -1 to -3% for the SSP2 4.5, so the intermediate scenario. And if we go to scenarios that is more emissive in terms of greenhouse gases, for example, the SSP5 8.5, we can have a decrease of -5%, which is in line with the IPCC 6 assessment report, and also in line with the different literature in this subject. We also have assessed the change in low winds, which is based on the 5th quantile on the left. And we also see that we have a tendency in decreasing in wind for the 3 sea fronts, with a decrease that is more pronounced maybe for the Mediterranean coast, and it is highly significant when we go to more emissive scenarios. And then regarding high winds, the picture is less clear. We can see, at least for the long-term period, on the bottom of the figures, that we have a stagnation or some decrease in Mediterranean. We have a decrease in the Atlantic coast and some increase in the English Channel. And these results are also significant for the most emissive scenario, SSP5 8.5. Next slide. And this can be maybe can be a little bit different from what we have seen in the IPCC assessment report. Here it's a summary of the different variables. In red, we highlight the wind, and we can see that for severe windstorm, which can be associated with the extreme wind and high speed winds, we have a general tendency to and a high confidence of increase for the different regions that are represented in this figure. So we have a general decrease in high winds. However, for to see now results, we have this decrease we have this increase only in the English channel. So more work has to be done to assess the difference between this response in terms of sign of change. But however, one thing that we can highlight is the number of models. For example, here it's based on more than 30 models. In our case, we are based on 13 models. They are well assessed, but they are still 13 models. So it can be one answer about this difference. However, we have so the same weakening of wind for Mediterranean in accordance with IPCC 6 assessment reports. So next slide. The previous assessment were about the multi-model approach. Here we focus on model uncertainties. So for that we use box plots, which provide a synthetic view of the behavior of the different models. The different models are represented by points so that we can see clearly the spread of the future changes. But we have also different statistics that can be also showed using this box plot. For example, the median, which can be used to assess the median change of the different models. So it's a way to synthesize the information, and also based on this box plot, 2 different confidence levels were used. We have the first one, which is the significance level, which assesses how, if the distribution is really different from the historical period, using the Kramer-von-Mises test. And the other level of agreement is about the sign. So it indicates the percentage of models that agree on the sign, either an increase or a decrease. And so the IPCC report always use at least this, the second level to have an information about the sign of the change, either an increase or decrease in terms of percentage. So if we have more than 60 models that that agree on the sign, either an increase or decrease, we are in high confidence. And if we are more than 80 models of 80% of models that agree on the sign, we have a very high confidence level on this sign. So let's see the results. Yes, okay, so here we have these different box plots with the 2 different periods, 2050 horizon and the end of the century in blue. And we have the different points that were presented before. And so the first thing that we see is that we have high to very high confidence indices, particularly for the long-term future period. And these confidence indices are observed either for the significance level or the agreement level. The different models agree at least on the sign. And we can see that the median in general is a decrease with around -3% for the Atlantic and -2 for the Mediterranean coast under the SSP2 4.5 scenario. And we have very high confidence of decrease in wind for the more emissive scenarios, with nearly -5% of change for the most emissive scenarios. And then we have also to highlight the large model uncertainties that we have, because we observe, so for example, for the English channel, we observe some models that are far away from the median, more than -10% to nearly -15% of decrease. And some models we have around 5 or 6% of decrease. So the conclusion is, yes, we have a robust weakening. We have high to very high confidence on the weakening of the median. However, we have to be careful with the large model uncertainties, because it's still big, especially for the English Channel. We have less spread for the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, and this confidence is even is even better for the more emissive scenarios, but we have still spread in the model uncertainties. Next slide. And so a few words without going into details in this figure, but just to highlight that we have analyzed also the different change for the seasons, so spring, summer, fall, and winter. And in orange, we highlighted the significance in summer, where we actually observe high confidence of decrease, especially for the long-term period for the different seafronts. And the other thing is that we are also in line with the different literature about this confidence in a decrease for summer. Next slide. We have also a decrease for spring and fall, but it's less significant as summer. And for winter, we can observe some stagnation or some increase, as we observed before in the multimodal approach, an increase mainly in the Eastern Channel, where we have a pronounced maybe increase, but still the model spread is large, and we can't conclude from these results for the spring, fall, and winter. So the only conclusion is for the moment for the summer. Next slide. So here we go to the wind energy production, and for that we used the PyWake tool to convert wind speed to wind energy using 100-meter wind speed, which were extrapolated from 10-meter wind speed using the power law and an alpha coefficient that was calculated for each hour and locally. And we also used the standard wind turbine of 15 megawatts to assess the wind energy production using PyWake. Next slide. So again, we obtain the different high to very high confidence indices on the weakening of wind energy, with values between -2 to -4 for the midterm and -2 to -6 for the Atlantic for the long term under the SSP2 4.5 scenario. We have also we don't show it here, but we have also high confidence on summer and fall regarding the decrease, with -5% for the Western Mediterranean to -9% for South Atlantic. And again, we have still some large model uncertainties in terms of the amplitude of the change. So we still have a robust weakening in terms of confidence, but the spread is large between models. As for wind, we have very high confidence for the most emissive scenario, SSP3 7.0 and SSP5 8.5 for the Atlantic and Mediterranean, with degrees from -4 to -8%. Next slide. To sum up rapidly, so we have different results regarding a general decrease of wind and wind energy productions, with certain consensus between in terms of amplitude and in terms of literature. So we obtain nearly the same conclusion in terms of mean wind with the IPCC and the present literature. We have significant results for the Atlantic and for Mediterranean coasts. They are the most coasts that are impacted by climate change. And these changes are more important in summer, and they are also significant in summer, spring, and fall for the most emissive scenarios. Regarding low winds, we have a decrease in low wind speed, mostly for the Mediterranean and Atlantic. And this is also noticed when we focus on the occurrence of wind speed below Catin, using the Catin of the turbine that was assessed for the wind energy productions, with more than 100 to 200 hours for the long-term period in comparison to baseline. So this is the occurrence of wind speed below Catin. And finally, for high winds, we'll have less significant results with different picture for the different coasts. And we highlight also that we have large model uncertainty in terms of amplitude of change, in terms also of whether it's an increase or decrease. So we have to be also careful with these results. And for next slide, for the future, we have to include different other models, maybe more precise models in terms of spatial and temporal resolution. As we said here, we are dealing with the global models with 100-kilometer resolution. So it will be really good to have finer resolution to assess better the climate change impact on wind. We also made many efforts on quantifying these uncertainties in model uncertainties using the different significance level, but we can push more with these uncertainties, and then maybe use other turbines to with different characteristics in terms of cut-in and cut-out, and explore the different sensitivity of the results.